let's go to Jeremiah in Seattle. Welcome to the Line of Fire.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Dr. Brown.
Good afternoon.
I was looking at the perhaps difference of opinion between keeping the Old Testament laws out of obedience versus having kind of moved past that in today's age through Jesus. Because my church and I, we've been studying the Old Testament laws and trying to follow them for obedience, not for salvation, because I believe you and I agree on that salvation is only by grace through our faith.
Yes, so clearly the New Testament does not call all believers to live by all the commands of the Sinai covenant. Quite clearly, quite emphatically. It does not.
What verses would you point to? Because I've been studying for quite a while, and every time I read verses, I see that it's pretty clear that we should be.
Okay, first thing, Acts 15 is a decisive command. And when the question came up, it was the perfect time to say it. And God made clear that the Gentile believers were not required to keep all of the Sinai covenant. And you've got to try to read something into that to make it say other than it says. That's the first place I start.
Do you believe that verse is for just simple obedience, or is that specifically for salvation, as is described in the very beginning?
It's addressing what do they need to do. And are you saying for salvation? Wait, hang on. Are you saying for salvation that a Gentile believer?
I believe Acts 15. I believe Acts 15 is talking about the necessary things to do for salvation.
So hey, that's what I'm asking you. All right, but hang on, Jeremiah, you wanted my help here, right? Correct?
Yeah.
All right, you wanted my input. So allow me to address this. You're telling me that in order to be saved, so Acts 15 is telling you that there's certain dietary laws that you have to keep in order to be saved. That's what you're saying?
No.
All right. Well, okay. So then Acts 15 is not just about salvation.
No. Sorry. In Acts 15, from what I can see, the circumcision party was saying they believe that you must do all these works, including circumcision, to be saved. And because the Gentiles who had received the Holy Spirit received that fire.
Were they saved the moment? Were they saved the moment they received the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is not what they need to do to be saved. This is saying all right. So this was never about being saved. This was about obedience. This was never about being saved. Everyone recognized they were already saved. Okay. It was about obedience. And he was saying, no, you do not.
But in the text,
Michael, tell you what, I'll give you one more shot. I can't help you if you keep interrupting me as I'm trying to explain things. Okay. All right. Okay. So either if you want to make a point and you have an argument to raise, and send us a long email and lay it all out where you can make all your points. All right. But I'd love to help you here, but I can't if every time I try to answer, you cut in and interrupt. Just trying to be fair here. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. All good. So Acts 15 is not about salvation, all right? It is about obedience and what's minimally required, okay? The question is, do Gentiles have to become Jews and obey the law of Moses? And the answer is no. It is salvation and it is obedience, and the answer is no. So nowhere does the New Testament ever contradict that. Nowhere does the New Testament ever tell Gentile believers, you must eat this, not eat this, etc. It doesn't do that. It's number one. Number two, in Colossians, the 2nd chapter, Paul urges the believers there not to let anyone put them under pressure to keep a Sabbath or a new moon or feast, reminding them that these things are only the shadow, but the substance is found in the Messiah. So those are two places where I start. Romans 14 certainly ties into the discussion, as Rome had Jewish believers and Gentile believers about obeying certain days. And Paul is clearly giving liberty there. And then 1 Corinthians 7, he gives explicit instructions. If you're saved circumcised, don't become uncircumcised. If you're saved uncircumcised, don't become circumcised. So he's telling a Gentile, you don't have to become a Jew. So there's nowhere in the New Testament, then all the evidence of the early church fathers, that Gentile believers were all commanded to observe the Sinai covenant for obedience or any other reason. There's not a stitch of evidence in the New Testament. Everything in the New Testament is against that.
Okay. I think there's a few things that you've mentioned in the scriptures, which I think kind of read into perhaps to force interpretation, where I might have seen it differently.
Well, why is
And one
why
thing that
is
might
my
help is
view
I
why
guess,
is my view forcing something? I'm just reading straightforward in the text and what the vast majority
well,
of Greek
for
scholars and
example,
commentators would say. Why am I forcing something on it?
mhm, right. Well, for example, in the Acts 15, the circumcision party clearly states that they're trying to pressure Gentiles to follow the law specifically for salvation. But then the one about the Sabbath, when Paul speaks, don't let anyone, pass judgment upon you for concerning Sabbaths and new moons. You put in the fact that don't let anyone pressure you to keep them, where it could be seen as don't let anyone pressure you because you keep them, because it simply says don't let anyone pressure you concerning them.
Right, but the whole context, I'm not reading something in. The whole context is a warning about laws and regulations and things that have to do with this age. And that's why he says that's only the shadow. The substance is found in the Messiah and Romans 14 as well. But hey,
Okay.
look, bottom line, and I want to, I've taken extra time, but I've addressed this endlessly. I'll say it again. There is nothing, not a stitch of evidence in the New Testament that commands Gentile believers to keep the Sinai covenant for obedience. Hebrews 7 explicitly tells us there have been changes. Romans 7 tells us we walk by the new way of the Spirit. There is a new and better covenant. Things have changed in terms of a fulfillment because of the Messiah coming into the world. And many people get into bondage to this. The other thing is, nowhere among the church fathers do you have any hint that all the Gentile believers were living by the Sinai covenant. In fact, when Jewish believers continued to live as Jews, a lot of the Gentile believers didn't understand it because it was different than the way the others were living. Hey, Jeremiah, let's stay in the word. If we come to different conclusions, we do.